A legendary sword could cut through armor, yet was light enough to dance in the air. This was the reality of Damascus steel, a masterpiece of metal whose creation became a forgotten art. By the end of this, you will understand the incredible fusion of science and skill that made these blades possible and why their loss still haunts us. We are going to trace their journey from ancient mines to modern labs, unlocking how a simple twist in the metal's pattern held the key to its impossible strength. What does it mean when a civilization's greatest technology simply disappears? The raw material for this legend was born far from the deserts of the Middle East. Deep in the forests of ancient India, around 300 years before the Common Era, metalworkers achieved something extraordinary. They mastered a crucible process, sealing iron and carbon-rich organic material like wood or leaves inside clay vessels and heating them in a furnace for days. This slow, controlled alchemy produced ingots of what we now call Wootz steel, a metal with a remarkably high and uniform carbon content. These unassuming, lumpy cakes of steel were the genetic blueprint for every Damascus blade to come. They became a prized commodity, traveling thousands of miles along the Silk Road. Caravans carried these ingots through mountains and across deserts, their final destination often being the great trading city of Damascus. Here, in the workshops of Syrian master smiths, the true magic happened. These artisans did not invent the steel, but they perfected its final form. They acquired the Wootz ingots and possessed the unparalleled skill to forge them, unlocking the hidden potential within the metal. It was in their hands that the raw material transformed into objects of both deadly function and breathtaking beauty. Imagine the bustling markets of the medieval world, a crossroads of cultures and commerce. Among the spices, silks, and stories, the reputation of a Damascus sword was a tangible force. Warriors and nobles spoke of blades that could slice a floating silk scarf in midair, yet remain tough enough to cleave through an opponent's shield without shattering. The very name Damascus became a brand, a synonym for invincibility. Owning one was not just about having a weapon, it was about possessing a piece of perfected technology, a symbol of status and survival that echoed across battlefields from the Crusades to the Mongol invasions. This centuries-long reputation did not arise from myth alone. It was built on a consistent, observable superiority that everyone could see but no one could fully explain. The stage was now set not for a battle of armies but for a mystery of materials, a secret so well kept it would one day vanish entirely. The secret was baked into the steel from its very first breath. Before any hammer ever struck, the magic was already sleeping inside those rough, dark ingots. To understand why, we have to look at the raw recipe, a formula so precise it borders on alchemy. It began with a very specific type of iron ore mined in ancient India. This wasn't just any rock, it was ore naturally infused with tiny, almost invisible traces of other elements, particularly vanadium. Think of these trace elements as a unique spice blend, a geological signature that would later define the blade's character. The metalworkers would take this special ore and seal it inside a clay crucible, a kind of ceramic pot, along with carefully measured pieces of carbon-rich organic material. This could be select leaves, certain types of wood, even pieces of bark. They weren't just throwing in fuel, they were adding the essential ingredient that turns soft iron into hard steel, carbon. Then they sealed the pot shut and placed it in a furnace for a long, slow burn, often lasting several days. This was the first critical act of control. By sealing the crucible, they created a miniature, isolated universe for the metal. No oxygen could get in to burn away the precious carbon, and no impurities from the fire could contaminate the melt. Inside this clay womb, the iron, the trace elements, and the carbon would slowly dissolve into one another under intense heat. But the real genius came next in the cooling. They didn't quench it or cool it quickly. They let the entire crucible cool down at an incredibly gradual pace, sometimes over 2 or 3 more days. This patient, almost meditative process is what allowed something extraordinary to happen at a microscopic level. As the molten soup of metal slowly solidified, the carbon and the trace elements didn't just mix randomly. They organized themselves. They formed incredibly thin, alternating layers or bands within the steel matrix. Scientists today call these cementite bands, and they are essentially long, microscopic ribbons of an extremely hard iron-carbon compound. This is where the story becomes truly fascinating. Those bands, created by that slow crucible cool, were a form of pre-patterning. They were a hidden, internal blueprint. The smith who later received this Wootz ingot couldn't see this pattern with his naked eye. The ingot just looked like a lump of pitted, dark metal. But that intricate nanoscale landscape was already there, locked inside, a potential waiting for the right artist to reveal it. So the legendary strength and flexibility of a Damascus sword wasn't invented by the swordsmith alone. It was a collaboration across centuries and continents. The Indian metallurgist was the composer, writing a complex song of crystal and carbon into the metal itself. The Syrian bladesmith would later become the conductor, using his hammer and forge to bring that hidden song to the surface for all to see and hear in the ring of battle. But how exactly did he perform that miracle? What did he see in that dull ingot that told him where to strike? That hidden song within the metal needed a maestro to give it a voice. The master smith's forge was his concert hall, and his hammer was his baton. His first task was to take that unassuming Wootz ingot with its secret nanoscale landscape and begin a physical conversation with it. He would heat it until it glowed a brilliant orange, a state where the steel became soft and malleable, almost like thick clay. Then, with precise, controlled blows, he would begin to draw it out, lengthening the ingot into a rough bar. This was not a simple shaping process. It was a deliberate act of mechanical manipulation. Each time he heated and hammered the steel, he was doing something profound to its internal world. Those microscopic ribbons of hard cementite, the ones formed during the slow crucible cool, could not melt or dissolve at these forging temperatures. Instead, they were forced to behave. The hammer's pressure stretched them, elongated them, and caused them to align in the direction of the force. Think of it like kneading dough with layers of cinnamon inside. As you fold and press the dough, those cinnamon streaks don't disappear. They get stretched out into long, thin, parallel lines. Now the smith would do something that seems counterintuitive. He would fold the steel. He might take the elongated bar, bend it over upon itself, and weld it shut with another heat and hammer blow. Then he would draw it out again. He might repeat this folding process multiple times, not dozens of times like in later Japanese traditions, but enough to create a specific, controlled, layered structure. This folding and drawing had a magnificent effect. It took those already aligned cementite ribbons and multiplied them, creating a laminated structure of hard and soft layers within the steel. And then, with a final series of expert hammer taps, often at a precise angle, he would draw the bar to its final shape, the taper of a sword blade. This final forging step is what finally brought the hidden pattern to the surface, like a photographer developing a latent image. The angled hammering caused the laminated layers to intersect the blade's surface in a series of flowing, wavy lines. When the finished blade was polished and lightly etched with a mild acid, the chemical reaction revealed everything. The hard cementite layers resisted the acid, remaining bright and silvery, while the softer steel in between darkened. The result was that iconic, rippling contrast, the visual phenomenon we call the Damascus pattern, often described as watered silk or flowing water. But here is the crucial point every viewer must understand. This beautiful pattern was not decoration applied on top of the steel. It was a direct, unavoidable map of the blade's internal architecture. Every swirling line you see was the edge of a hard, wear-resistant layer emerging at the surface. This meant the cutting edge itself was not a uniform piece of metal, but a microscopic serration, a naturally occurring sawtooth pattern of extreme hardness supported by a softer, more flexible spine. This structure is what solved the ancient metallurgical dilemma. A sword that is uniformly hard will be brittle and snap under impact. A sword that is uniformly soft will bend and dull. The Damascus pattern represented a perfect gradient. It gave the edge its legendary sharpness and retention, while the softer core absorbed the shock of blows, preventing catastrophic failure. The beauty was literally the beast. The mesmerizing pattern was a certificate of authenticity, a guarantee that the steel within had been masterfully worked to achieve an ideal balance. So when a warrior saw that watery gleam on a blade, he wasn't just admiring art, he was reading a technical schematic of superior performance. This visible signature was proof that the smith had successfully unlocked the potential planted in the steel centuries earlier and continents away. Yet for all this profound understanding, the art still vanished. The final, most heartbreaking mystery is not how they were made, but why the knowledge of how to make them simply stopped being passed down. The master smith's workshop was a world governed by fire, sound, and intuition. This was not a factory floor, but a sacred space where the hidden potential of the Wootz ingot was coaxed into reality through a series of deliberate, almost ritualistic acts. The first and most critical step was reading the fire. The smith would place the dark, pitted ingot into his charcoal forge, watching as the colors shifted from a dull red to a bright, luminous orange. He wasn't just looking for a color, he was searching for a specific state of being within the metal. The steel needed to reach a temperature hot enough to become soft and malleable, like stiff taffy, but crucially, not a single degree hotter. If he overheated it, the delicate, microscopic structures formed in the crucible, those ribbons of hard carbide, would begin to dissolve back into the matrix. It would be like erasing the musical score before the orchestra could play it. All that patient work from the Indian furnace would be undone in an instant. His entire craft hinged on this moment of perfect thermal judgment, a skill learned not from a thermometer, but from a lifetime of watching the subtle dance of light on hot steel. Once the metal sang with the right heat, the hammering began. This was not brute force, but a conversation. With rhythmic, controlled blows, he started to draw the lump into a longer, flatter shape. Each strike did more than change the form. It physically manipulated the steel's internal world. Those hard carbide bands, unable to melt, were instead stretched and elongated by the pressure, aligning themselves along the length of the emerging blade. Now came the transformative act of folding. The smith might take the elongated bar, bend it back over itself, and weld the two halves together with another careful heat and hammer blow. He would then draw it out once more. This process, which we might call pattern welding on a microscopic scale, was repeated several times. Each fold multiplied the internal layers, creating a complex laminated structure, like the pages of a book fused into a single, incredibly strong sheet. This refined the metal's grain, making it denser and more uniform, while distributing the carbon with exquisite precision. The smith's hands, his eyes, and his innate feel for the metal's resistance were the only guide. There was no manual, no diagram. His intuition, built over decades, was the living algorithm processing 1,000 variables: the heat of the forge, the sound of the hammer strike, the way the metal yielded. This human element, this seamless fusion of knowledge and instinct, is what modern machines and precise digital controls still find so difficult to replicate. It was the art within the science. The final shape was drawn with angled hammer taps, a deliberate technique that caused all those multiplied internal layers to intersect the blade's surface in a flowing, wavy topography. Only then, after polishing and a gentle etch with acid, would the secret finally become visible. The hard layers resisted the acid, shining bright, while the softer steel between them darkened, revealing that iconic, watery pattern. The beautiful design was the direct and unavoidable result of this profound physical manipulation, a testament to a ritual where fire, force, and human genius became one. Yet this entire magnificent tradition, this chain of knowledge that stretched from mine to market, would one day be severed. The workshops fell silent, and the reason for their silence is perhaps the most puzzling part of the entire story. The final shape of the blade was only the beginning of its transformation. Once the smith had revealed the watery pattern through etching, the steel was still in a relatively soft state. To become a true legend, it had to undergo a final alchemical trial by fire and liquid, a process where the difference between a masterpiece and a shattered piece of scrap metal was measured in seconds and degrees. This was the art of heat treatment, and for Damascus steel, it was never as simple as just plunging the red-hot blade into a bucket of water. Historical clues suggest a far more nuanced ritual. The smith likely had a choice of quenching mediums, each with its own personality. Water cooled the steel the fastest, creating extreme hardness, but also a terrifying risk of cracking from the thermal shock. Oil cooled more gently, offering a safer path to a hard edge. Some accounts even mention special brines or other liquids, each recipe a closely guarded secret that altered the final character of the metal. The choice was a calculated risk, a balance between the desired razor's edge and the catastrophic cost of failure. But the true genius may have lain in what happened next, a technique modern swordsmiths call differential tempering. After the quench, the entire blade would be dangerously hard and brittle like glass. To reintroduce flexibility, the smith would reheat it, but not uniformly. He might hold the broad spine of the blade over the coals, allowing that heat to slowly temper the core, drawing out some hardness and replacing it with incredible toughness. Meanwhile, he kept the cutting edge cooler, preserving its glass-like hardness. Through this delicate dance of applied heat, he created a single object with two distinct personalities. The result was a blade that defied the laws of ordinary metal. Its edge could be honed to a sharpness that seemed to defy physics, capable of holding that edge through brutal use. Yet the spine and core remained resilient, able to bend and flex under tremendous impact without snapping. This wasn't just a piece of sharp metal, it was a living extension of a warrior's will, perfectly engineered to translate force into effect. The smith's knowledge here was pure alchemy, an intuitive understanding of how to balance the contradictory demands of hardness and flexibility. One wrong move, one moment of inattention, and weeks of labor could vanish in the sound of a crack. When this final, secret step succeeded, the Damascus sword was complete, a perfect synthesis of mined ore, ancient crucibles, masterful hammerwork, and this final, fiery baptism. It was ready for history, but history, as it often does, began to change the very world that made such wonders possible. For generations, the search for the lost secret focused entirely on the smith's hands. Historians and swordsmiths alike pored over ancient texts and tried to replicate the hammering, the folding, the quenching, convinced the answer lay in a forgotten step of the forging ritual. This was a noble pursuit, but it was incomplete. The true breakthrough came not from a medieval workshop, but from a 20th century laboratory. With the advent of powerful tools like the electron microscope, scientists could finally peer into the heart of an antique Damascus blade at a level of detail the original smiths could never have conceived. What they found rewrote the entire mystery. The steel was not pure. It was not simply iron and carbon. Woven into its atomic fabric were incredibly tiny, almost vanishingly small amounts of other elements, trace impurities like vanadium, molybdenum, and perhaps a little chromium. These were not contaminants or mistakes, they were the missing ingredients. They had traveled all the way from those specific mines in ancient India, hitchhiking within the original iron ore. And they played a role far more important than anyone had guessed. These trace elements acted as catalysts and controllers during the crucible process. As the molten steel slowly cooled over days in its clay pot, these impurities influenced how the carbon arranged itself. They helped promote the formation of those incredibly thin, nanowire-like bands of cementite, and they regulated their size and spacing. Without them, even with the exact same slow cooling, the carbide bands would form differently. They might be too large, too clumpy, or not form the right continuous network. This was the revelation. The secret was not just in the smith's method, it was in the recipe of the raw material itself. The master in Damascus was a virtuoso performer, but the composition of the steel was the unique instrument he had to play. He could not create its special sound from ordinary metal. This discovery framed the loss in a new, more profound light. It wasn't just that a forging technique was forgotten. It was that a specific, naturally occurring resource was depleted or its supply chain severed. The synergy was broken. The unique ore from India, with its perfect, accidental blend of trace elements, stopped reaching the forges of Syria. Perhaps the mines played out or trade routes collapsed due to political upheaval or demand shifted. When that happened, the smiths were left with inferior ingredients. They could still practice their art, but they could no longer produce the same miracle. The orchestra was still there, but the unique violin was gone. So the legend faded, not with a bang, but with a slow, imperceptible shift in the quality of the raw materials arriving at the market. The smiths themselves may not have even fully understood why their best work now seemed just out of reach, why the metal no longer responded in quite the same magical way. The knowledge didn't vanish in a single moment. It eroded over generations, becoming a memory of a time when the stars, the ore, and human genius had all aligned. This scientific insight solves one puzzle but creates another, even more daunting one. If the secret lies in a specific geological recipe, can we ever truly bring it back, or are we forever chasing a ghost of a material that the earth itself has locked away? The clash of steel on the battlefield became a laboratory for myth. When Frankish knights met Saracen warriors in the dust and heat of the Holy Land, they were confronting more than a different faith. They were facing a superior technology. European chroniclers wrote with a mixture of terror and awe about the swords carried by their adversaries. These were not the heavy, cleaving weapons the knights were used to. They were described as agile, flashing like water in the sun, and possessing a fearsome sharpness that European mail armor seemed unable to withstand. Stories spread of a single blow slicing clean through a shield or shearing a knight's helmet. In an age where survival hinged on the quality of your armor, the psychological impact of a weapon that could negate that protection was profound. This wasn't just a story about losing a battle. It was about a fundamental vulnerability being exposed. The Damascus blade, in the hands of a skilled warrior, became a symbol of Eastern ingenuity and a stark reminder of a technological gap that Europe had not anticipated. The legend of its near-magical properties, of its ability to cut floating silk or cleave through iron, was born not in peaceful workshops but in the brutal, first-hand accounts of soldiers who had faced it. This encounter did more than win battles. It rewrote an entire continent's understanding of what was possible in metallurgy. For centuries, European sword-making had followed its own path, favoring robust, durable weapons for powerful, armor-shattering blows. The Damascus sword presented a completely different philosophy, one of elegant efficiency, where extreme sharpness and resilient flexibility were valued above all else. The returning Crusaders brought back more than relics and stories. They brought back a deep-seated desire. The Damascus blade became the ultimate trophy, an object of immense prestige and a puzzle to be solved. European nobles coveted them, paying exorbitant sums to acquire examples through trade or as spoils of war. Kings and emperors sought to possess them, not just as weapons, but as symbols of power and connection to a mysterious, advanced knowledge. This burning desire sparked centuries of attempted imitation. Armorers from Toledo to Milan studied the blades, trying to reverse engineer their secrets. They developed their own pattern welding techniques, folding different grades of steel to create beautiful, swirling designs on the surface of their swords. These European Damascus blades were often magnificent works of art, and they captured the visual essence of the original, but they were an imitation of the effect, not the cause. They replicated the beautiful watery pattern without achieving the same legendary performance at the core. They were creating a visual forgery because they lacked the two essential ingredients, the specific Wootz steel with its trace elements, and the complete, living knowledge of how to forge it. The European encounter, therefore, locked the legend of Damascus steel into a cycle of desire and frustration. It established the blade as the pinnacle of the swordsmith's art, a benchmark against which all others were measured, and simultaneously guaranteed that its true secret would remain just out of reach, a ghost of superior knowledge haunting the forges of the West. This context makes the ultimate loss so much more poignant. It wasn't a forgotten local craft, it was a globally recognized standard of excellence that vanished, leaving behind a legacy of yearning and unanswered questions that would echo all the way to the modern age. A civilization's greatest technology rarely vanishes in a single dramatic moment. More often, it is slowly abandoned, its supporting structures eroded by a changing world until one day, no one remembers how to begin. The loss of Damascus steel was not an accident of war or a natural disaster, but a quiet casualty of economic and cultural shifts that rewrote the rules of survival and commerce. The intricate supply chain that had nourished the art for over 1,000 years began to fray at both ends. In India, the specific mines that produced the ore with its magical trace elements may have simply been exhausted, their unique geological recipe depleted. More critically, the ancient trade routes that acted as the arteries of this knowledge were severed. The political landscape of the medieval world was in constant upheaval. The gradual decline of the Byzantine Empire, a linchpin of East-West trade, and the rise of new powers and conflicts made the long, perilous journey of Wootz ingots from Indian furnaces to Syrian forges increasingly unreliable and then impossible. The raw material of legend stopped arriving at the market stalls of Damascus. A master smith could possess all the skill in the world, but he could not forge a miracle from ordinary iron. Yet, the demand for the blades might have sustained a search for new materials, for adaptation, if not for a parallel revolution on the battlefield. The very purpose of the sword was being undermined. The rise of gunpowder and early firearms began a slow but irreversible change in warfare. While swords would remain sidearms for centuries, their role as the primary determinant of combat was fading. Why invest a fortune and years of training to create the perfect blade when a soldier with a month of training could wield a musket? The economic incentive, the driving force that supported generations of master artisans, evaporated. This is where the human element of the loss becomes most poignant. The knowledge of how to read the Wootz steel, how to heat it just so, how to fold and draw it to reveal its soul, was not written in books. It was a living language passed from teacher to apprentice, from father to son, through years of silent observation and guided hands at the forge. It existed in the subtle judgment of a color in the fire and the specific ring of a hammer strike. As the market for their supreme art collapsed, these masters found no new students. The guilds that protected these secrets dwindled. A lifetime of expertise became a personal memory, then a family story, and then silence. The skills did not disappear in a fire or a war. They faded from lack of use, from a world that no longer had a place for them. The only witnesses left were the blades themselves, scattered across continents in armories and tombs, their watery patterns still gleaming, now holding a secret they could no longer tell. This raises a haunting question for our own age of rapid technological change. What priceless understanding are we losing right now, not to catastrophe, but simply to a lack of interest? The silence surrounding the forges lasted for centuries, but it was not permanent. In the 1900s, the mystery of Damascus steel found new detectives, armed not with hammers and tongs, but with electron microscopes and spectrometers. This was no longer a quest for a lost weapon, but a scientific investigation into a forgotten state of matter. Leading this charge was a materials scientist named John Verhoeven. His approach was methodical and modern. He began by acquiring fragments of genuine antique blades, not to admire their beauty, but to dissolve them in acid and analyze their atomic makeup. The goal was to create a chemical fingerprint to finally answer the question, what exactly was this metal? The results were a revelation. Verhoeven and his colleagues confirmed the presence of those crucial trace elements, especially vanadium and molybdenum, in the antique steel. This was the first hard evidence that the legend was rooted in chemistry, not just craftsmanship. With this blueprint in hand, they attempted to reverse engineer the process from scratch. In laboratory furnaces, they recreated the ancient Crucible method using highly purified iron and carbon. They carefully controlled the heating and, most importantly, the incredibly slow cooling over days. When they opened their modern crucibles and forged the resulting steel, they saw a pattern, but it was weak and underwhelming. The ghost was there, but it was faint, a pale imitation of the vibrant, watery bands on the antique originals. Something vital was still missing from their recipe. This was the moment of breakthrough thinking. If pure ingredients failed, then impurity was the key. They began deliberately adding minute amounts of vanadium and other trace elements to their molten steel soup, essentially spiking their pure mix with the very contaminants they had spent centuries trying to eliminate in modern metallurgy. The results were transformative. With these additives present, the slow cooling process produced a dramatic change at the microscopic level. Those beautiful, swirling bands of cementite nanowires emerged clear and strong, just as they had in the ancient blades. The laboratory had proven, beyond any doubt, that the trace elements acted as catalysts. They guided the carbon's self-organization during solidification, creating the internal nano-landscape that the smith's hammer would later reveal. This painstaking work did more than solve a historical puzzle. It validated the intuition of the ancient masters. It showed that their empirical art, developed over generations of trial and observation, had accidentally harnessed principles of materials science we are only now formally understanding. The legend was pulled from the realm of myth and placed firmly on the periodic table. Yet, solving the chemical riddle raised a new and more practical challenge. Could this knowledge be used not just to understand the past, but to create something new for the future? The scientific breakthrough solved a mystery, but it also ignited a new and deeply personal debate among those who keep the old arts alive. In forges around the world today, you can find stunning blades bearing the iconic, watery pattern of Damascus steel. Yet, if you ask the smith who made it, you will likely uncover a philosophical divide. The vast majority of what is sold as Damascus steel today is not made from a single, slowly cooled ingot of Wootz. It is created through a process called pattern welding. A modern smith takes two or more different types of steel, say a high-carbon steel and a nickel alloy, stacks them into a block, and then heats, hammers, and folds them together dozens of times. This manual lamination creates hundreds of layers, and when the blade is etched, the different metals react to the acid at different rates, producing a dramatic, contrasting pattern. The result is often breathtakingly beautiful, a true testament to skill, and it can make for an exceptionally high-performance blade. But is it Damascus steel? For some in the community, this is the only honest path forward. They argue that the original Wootz ore is gone, its specific geological recipe lost to time. To claim otherwise is a kind of forgery. Their goal is to use the best materials and techniques available now to create a functional work of art that honors the spirit of the original, the marriage of beauty and utility, without pretending to be something it is not. This is replication, a tribute built with modern understanding. On the other side of the anvil are the purists, the historical recreationists. For them, the soul of the Damascus blade was in that specific alchemy of earth and fire, in the Wootz ingot and the singular process that unlocked it. Their pursuit is not just about the final look, but about the authentic journey. They use the laboratory findings, sourcing steels with similar trace elements, and painstakingly recreating the crucible process and the slow cool, aiming to produce a new ingot of true Wootz steel from scratch. Their blades are attempts to walk the same path the ancient smiths walked, to solve the same problems with the same constraints. This is an incredibly difficult, expensive, and often frustrating pursuit, where success is measured in millimeters of promising pattern on a test bar. The debate, at its heart, is about what we value in the legacy of a lost technology. Is the soul of the Damascus sword in its material essence, a specific arrangement of atoms born from a unique place on Earth, or is its soul in its function and form, in the idea of a blade that is both devastatingly effective and hauntingly beautiful? The pattern welding smith might say he is keeping the idea alive, adapting it for a new world. The recreationist might say he is searching for the ghost itself, hoping to hear its true voice just one more time. This tension is not about who is right, but about what we are trying to recover when we reach back into the past. Are we seeking the object, or are we seeking the understanding that created it? Perhaps in their own ways, both approaches are answering a call from those silent forges, a call that asks not just for imitation, but for remembrance. The true nature of the Damascus blade's secret may have been hiding in a dimension no medieval eye could ever see. In a stunning twist for 21st century science, researchers using the most advanced imaging tools made a discovery that rewrote the narrative once more. They weren't just looking at the pattern of the steel, they were mapping its atomic architecture. What they found suggested that the legendary strength was not just about layers or trace elements, but about a ghostly reinforcement at the smallest scale imaginable. High-resolution studies of antique blade fragments revealed the possible presence of carbon nanotubes woven directly into the metal's matrix. Think of these nanotubes as unimaginably tiny, hollow cylinders of carbon atoms arranged in a perfect hexagonal lattice. In modern labs, we create them with sophisticated equipment, and they are celebrated as some of the strongest, stiffest materials ever discovered, with potential uses in everything from aerospace to medicine. The revelation was that these microscopic marvels may have formed naturally over 1,000 years ago inside the clay crucibles of ancient India. How? The answer lies in the original recipe. Remember the organic material, the leaves and wood chips sealed inside the pot with the iron ore. As this material charred and broke down in the intense, days-long heat, it didn't just release carbon into the melt, it may have provided the precise conditions for these carbon structures to self-assemble. It was a perfect, accidental alchemy, where the slow heating and cooling, the presence of specific catalysts from the ore, and the carbon source all combined to grow these reinforcing nanotubes right into the fabric of the steel. This bridges a gap in understanding that feels almost magical. It suggests that the medieval smiths, through their empirical craft and inherited rituals, were unknowingly practicing a form of nano-engineering. They were creating a composite material, a steel reinforced with carbon nanotubes, achieving through fire and intuition what our most advanced laboratories strive for with electron beams and clean rooms. The nanotubes would have acted like a microscopic skeleton within the metal, an internal scaffold that provided incredible tensile strength and resilience, helping to explain those near-mythical tales of flexibility and edge retention. This discovery does not diminish the smith's genius, it elevates it. It shows that their entire process, from the choice of organic matter to the patient crucible cool, was cultivating a hidden forest of strength at the nanoscale. The smith who later forged the blade was not just shaping metal, he was carefully aligning and preserving this invisible reinforcement with every hammer stroke. The beautiful Damascus pattern we see is the macroscopic echo of this nanoscale reality, so the story transforms from a lost art to a found principle. We are not just recovering a way to make a sword, we are uncovering a forgotten pathway in materials science, one where nature and human guidance collaborated to create a substance centuries ahead of its time. This raises a profound and humbling question for our age of hyper-precision. What other transcendent technologies are waiting to be rediscovered, not in our futures but in our pasts? The blade's journey did not end when it left the smith's hand. Its true power was only beginning to awaken, not on the battlefield but in the realm of ideas. In the cultures that created and revered it, the Damascus sword transcended its function as a weapon to become a vessel of profound meaning. Within the rich tapestry of Islamic art and poetry, the blade was rarely depicted as an instrument of conflict. Instead, it evolved into a potent symbol of divine justice and spiritual clarity. Poets and mystics spoke of the sword of discernment, a metaphor for the intellect's ability to cut through illusion and see the truth. Its legendary sharpness represented the precision of moral judgment, while the flowing, watery pattern evoked purity and the fluid grace of enlightenment. To possess such a blade was to align oneself with ideals of righteousness, refinement, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge, a cutting away of ignorance as cleanly as the edge-parted silk. This symbolic power traveled west with the blades themselves, transforming in the European imagination. Here, stripped of its specific cultural context, it became the archetype of the perfect weapon, the ultimate artifact of lost and superior knowledge. Writers like Sir Walter Scott wove it into romantic tales of the Crusades, cementing its image as the exotic, peerless arm of the noble Saracen warrior. From there, the legend seeped into the bedrock of modern fantasy. The Damascus sword, or blades inspired directly by its mythos, appear as named legendary weapons, heirlooms of ancient kingdoms, and the prized possessions of elves and master smiths in countless novels, films, and games. Its very name conjures an immediate sense of history, rarity, and unmatched quality. It is the standard against which all other fictional blades are measured, a pre-loaded piece of lore that every audience instinctively understands. This enduring fascination has spilled over from story into tangible form. The distinctive, organic pattern of Damascus steel, that mesmerizing flow of light and dark, has been liberated from the blade altogether. You can now find it etched into the surface of luxury watches, forged into rings and bracelets, and even echoed in architectural metalwork and automotive detailing. The pattern is no longer a guarantee of performance. It is an aesthetic language that speaks of heritage, complexity, and layered beauty. It tells a story of something crafted, not merely manufactured. This is perhaps the most remarkable chapter in the sword's legacy. Its complete metamorphosis from a tool designed for a singular, harsh purpose into a universal icon of human ingenuity. The physical secret of its making may have been lost, but the pattern it produced became a permanent fixture in our visual vocabulary, a symbol of the mysterious alchemy where raw material is transformed into something greater than the sum of its parts. The story of Damascus steel, therefore, is no longer just a metallurgical mystery. It is a narrative about how objects acquire meaning, how they travel from the hand to the heart and the mind, continuing to be reforged in the endless fires of our collective imagination. That final transformation from weapon to icon has created a world where desire and deception walk hand in hand. For a serious collector, the dream is to own not just a beautiful blade, but a true artifact, a sliver of steel that once knew the fire of a medieval Damascus forge. This pursuit is the holy grail of antique arms collecting, a high-stakes endeavor where immense passion meets immense risk. The challenge is staggering because the market is an ocean of echoes. It is filled with breathtakingly skilled forplicas from the 19th century, modern pattern-welded homages, and outright forgeries designed to separate the hopeful from their money. Distinguishing a centuries-old masterpiece from a brilliant imitation requires the eye of a detective and the patience of a scholar. The first and most telling clue is the pattern itself. An expert will study the flow of the design under magnification. On a genuine antique Wootz blade, the watery lines are not just on the surface, they are the surface. The pattern has a three-dimensional quality, a depth and a natural, organic flow that looks like wind over sand or currents in a stream. Later imitations, especially those made by pattern welding different steels together, often have a pattern that looks more controlled, more symmetrical, or layered like plywood. It sits on top of the steel rather than emerging from within it, but visual inspection is only the beginning. Provenance, the documented history of ownership, is paramount. A blade that can be traced back through generations, perhaps mentioned in an old inventory or depicted in a portrait, carries a story that adds immense weight to its authenticity. In the absence of perfect paperwork, science steps in. Modern collectors and auction houses now employ non-destructive testing methods. They might use portable X-ray fluorescence scanners, devices that can analyze the metal's elemental composition without so much as scratching the polish. If the scan reveals the signature trace elements like vanadium in the correct proportions, it is a powerful piece of evidence pointing toward a genuine antique Wootz origin. The stakes for this detective work are almost unimaginably high. At prestigious auction houses, a single, verified 17th-century Damascus shamshir, a curved saber, can command a price well into six figures, a sum that reflects not just its beauty, but its profound rarity and its status as a relic of a lost technological peak. Yet for the true collector, the value transcends money. It is about holding a fragment of that lost world, a physical object that contains within its crystalline structure the entire epic journey we have traced. To hold such a blade is to feel the weight of the Indian crucible, the heat of the Syrian forge, and the gaze of every warrior and poet who ever saw its watery gleam and understood it as the pinnacle of human craft. It is to possess a piece of history that is also a piece of enduring mystery, a question mark made of steel that continues to challenge our understanding of the past. The line between a legendary sword and a mythical one can grow thin over centuries. Popular tales, passed down like campfire stories, have adorned the Damascus blade with powers that defy not just other weapons, but the very laws of physics. One enduring story claims a master could test his blade's edge by dropping a single hair upon it, watching it part effortlessly in midair. Another, more dramatic legend insists a true Damascus sword could slice clean through the barrel of a musket. These are captivating images, but they belong to the realm of symbolic hyperbole, not historical fact. The steel was phenomenal, but it was still steel. To cut a floating hair requires an edge of impossible thinness and a perfect, static alignment that the chaos of combat would never allow. As for cleaving a hardened iron or steel barrel, the forces involved would likely damage or shatter even the finest blade, a catastrophic loss no warrior would ever risk. These stories were not meant as technical manuals, they were metaphors. They were a culture's way of expressing, in the most vivid terms possible, that this weapon represented the absolute pinnacle of sharpness and strength they could conceive. The truth needed no dragon's blood in the etching bath or spells whispered at the forge. The reality, once we strip away the supernatural, is where the genuine awe begins. Consider the claim that these blades never needed sharpening. This is a misunderstanding of their real advantage. A Damascus sword would absolutely dull with use like any tool. Its legendary quality was edge retention, meaning it would stay lethally sharp through far more combat than a common blade before needing maintenance. This was not magic, it was microstructure. The natural microscopic serration created by the alternating hard and soft layers, that nanoscale sawtooth pattern, meant that even as the very finest edge wore down, a new, slightly smaller set of serrations was revealed beneath, maintaining a cutting capability long after a uniform edge would have gone blunt. It was a self-renewing architecture at a tiny scale, a feature born of intelligent design, not infinite sharpness. This grounded perspective does not diminish the smiths, it elevates them to a higher plane. To know that their achievements were not gifts from myth, but earned through generations of observation, failed experiments, and perfected technique, makes their work profoundly human. They confronted the limitations of their materials and the demands of their world, and through sheer ingenuity, they pushed those boundaries further than anyone thought possible. They worked within the laws of nature, not outside them, and in doing so, they created something that felt, to everyone who saw it, like a law unto itself. Their genius was in making the incredible credible. The steel itself remembers, beyond the legends and the gleaming patterns. An antique Damascus blade carries within its crystalline lattice a silent, detailed chronicle of its own creation. It is a metallurgical time capsule, sealed not in a vault, but in the atomic bonds forged over 1,000 years ago. Modern science has learned to read this chronicle, and the story it tells stretches far beyond the smith's workshop. By analyzing the very substance of the metal, researchers can perform a kind of archaeological forensics. One of the most powerful techniques involves studying the isotopic signature of the iron. Elements like iron have different stable isotopes, variants with slightly different atomic weights. The ratio of these isotopes in an ore deposit is unique, a fingerprint determined by the geological history of that specific location. When scientists vaporize a tiny, almost invisible sample from an antique blade and analyze it with a mass spectrometer, they can match that isotopic fingerprint to known ore sources. This has allowed them to do something astonishing, to trace the iron in a sword found in a European castle armory back to its precise birthplace, a specific mining region in southern India. The blade becomes a physical witness to the entire Silk Road, a piece of globalized trade made solid. But the story does not stop at the mine. Encapsulated within the steel are even smaller time capsules, microscopic imperfections called slag inclusions. These are tiny droplets of non-metallic material, bits of the furnace lining, fuel ash, or impurities from the original ore that were trapped in the metal during the initial smelting and never fully removed. To the modern researcher, these are not flaws, they are treasure troves of data. The chemical composition of a slag inclusion reveals the specific type of charcoal or fuel used in the ancient Indian furnace. Its shape and size can tell us about the temperature reached during smelting, and even the techniques used to work the molten metal. It is as if each blade contains a frozen moment of that original industrial fire, a snapshot of a technology that left no written manuals. By compiling this data from blades across different centuries, we can watch the evolution of an entire industrial process. We can see if smiths improved their furnace designs over time, if they began using different fuel sources, or if the quality of the ore changed as certain mines were exhausted. This turns a collection of swords into a dataset on medieval innovation and resource management. This perspective transforms the blade from a weapon into a multidimensional historical record. It speaks of economics, revealing the value and reach of long-distance trade networks that could transport tons of raw material across continents. It whispers of chemistry, showcasing an empirical mastery of materials that predates the periodic table by centuries. Most profoundly, it demonstrates a deep, interconnected world. A single object ties together the geology of India, the industrial craft of its metalworkers, the merchant caravans of Central Asia, the artistic genius of Syrian smiths, and the battlefields of Europe and the Middle East. Every Damascus sword is a nexus point in a vast, ancient web of human endeavor. This teaches us a crucial lesson about our own manufactured world. Every object we create, from the simplest tool to the most complex device, is a snapshot of our current technological and cultural ecosystem. It encodes the resources we have access to, the energy we use, the priorities of our society, and the limits of our knowledge. The story of Damascus steel urges us to look at the artifacts we are creating today and ask, what story will they tell future civilizations about how we lived, what we valued, and how wisely we used the world we were given? That mesmerizing watery pattern was far more than decoration. In the world of the Damascus blade, beauty was not an added feature, it was a report card. Every swirl and ripple on the surface was a direct, honest, and unforgiving map of what lay beneath. A master smith, by the time he etched the finished blade, could not hide his mistakes, nor could he fake his genius. The pattern emerged as the final verdict on his entire process. A regular, flowing, organic design, like the gentle contours of a sand dune, signaled something profound. It meant the internal layers of hard carbide were evenly distributed, aligned, and continuous. This uniformity was the direct result of perfect control, a consistent hammering technique, precise folding, and flawless heat treatment. Such a pattern whispered of a blade where strength and flexibility were balanced in perfect harmony from tip to hilt. Conversely, a broken, blotchy, or chaotic pattern was a glaring red flag. It might indicate a cold shut, a flaw where layers failed to weld properly, or an uneven heating that created weak spots in the steel's crystalline structure. In an age without laboratories or stress tests, this visual signature was the ultimate quality assurance. A buyer, often a warrior whose life depended on the blade's integrity, needed no complex certification. He simply needed to look at the light dancing along the steel. The pattern told him everything. It was a transparent language of craftsmanship, where aesthetics and performance were one and the same. This represents a design philosophy that feels almost revolutionary today. In the Damascus sword, beauty was not applied, it was emergent. It was not a veneer painted on top, but a natural consequence of excellence in the making. The stunning visual effect was the unavoidable byproduct of achieving the highest possible functional quality. The smith's goal was never to create a pretty pattern. His goal was to create a perfect sword. The pattern was simply the universe's way of confirming he had succeeded. This intrinsic link between form and function echoes in the most revered designs of our own time. From the elegant curves of a jet wing that minimize drag to the clean architecture of a microprocessor that maximizes efficiency. It speaks to a truth we instinctively recognize, that when something is truly, deeply well made for its purpose, it often possesses a quiet, inherent beauty. The Damascus pattern was the original proof of concept, a centuries-old reminder that the most honest advertisement for quality is the object itself, speaking through the language of its own perfect construction. The hunt for the ghost in the steel could not be confined to a laboratory. To truly understand what was lost, the search had to return to the earth itself, to the ancient landscapes where the story first began. Teams of geologists and historians embarked on a modern quest, combing through regions of southern India, particularly around Hyderabad, known in historical records as a source of the legendary iron. Their mission was not to find a mine, but to find the mine, or rather, the specific geological formation that gifted the world its perfect steel. Their most powerful tool was the concept of a fingerprint. Just as every person has a unique DNA code, every deposit of iron ore on Earth carries a distinct chemical signature, a specific ratio of trace elements like vanadium, molybdenum, and others, imprinted by the unique conditions of its formation millions of years ago. The scientists had already extracted this fingerprint from the antique blades. Now they walked the dry, rocky hillsides, taking samples from old mine pits and exposed rock faces, analyzing them to see if their elemental signature matched the one locked inside the centuries-old swords. This was geological detective work of the highest order, a meticulous process of elimination across a vast and ancient terrain. They were not just looking for iron, they were looking for a very specific recipe written in stone. This painstaking field research has yielded promising leads, narrowing down the likely sources to a handful of specific deposits. But it also highlights a profound and often overlooked truth about the Damascus legend. The secret was not solely a human invention, it was a geological accident. The perfect steel required a perfect and perfectly rare alignment of minerals in the original ore. It was a technology born from a unique marriage of human ingenuity and a singular, localized gift from the planet. The master smith in Damascus was the final artist, but the first and perhaps most crucial collaborator was the earth itself, in one specific place, at one specific moment in its deep history. This realization reframes the loss in a sobering way. When we speak of the secret of Damascus steel being forgotten, we might be speaking too kindly of human error. It is possible the secret did not fade from memory so much as it vanished from the ground. The specific ore body, that one in a million confluence of elements, may have been mined to exhaustion. Or perhaps seismic shifts, erosion, or centuries of agricultural change simply buried the last known veins, leaving no map for future generations. The great technology did not just lose its practitioners, it may have lost its raw material. This adds a layer of poignant fragility to our understanding of historical progress. It suggests that some pinnacles of human achievement are not just cultural or intellectual, they are geological. They are built on a non-renewable foundation of a specific rock in a specific hill. Once that foundation is gone, the pinnacle cannot be rebuilt, only remembered. It forces us to wonder, what other transcendent arts from our own past have we lost, not because we forgot the instructions, but because we used up the one irreplaceable ingredient the earth provided. The master smith's greatest tool was not his hammer but his intuition. His expertise lived in a realm beyond words, in the subtle language of the senses. He judged the steel's critical temperature not with a gauge, but by a specific shade of cherry red visible only in the dim, shadowy light of his workshop. He felt the metal's readiness in the way his hammer rebounded, a certain lively spring in the tool that told him the internal structure was aligning perfectly. He listened to the steel, interpreting the ring of a strike, a dull thud versus a clear ping, as a direct report on its integrity. This was tacit knowledge, a wisdom written in muscle memory and perceptual refinement, passed silently from teacher to apprentice over countless hours at the forge. It was a living curriculum of heat, sound, and touch. When the last masters of this tradition passed away without successors, this entire library of instinctive understanding vanished with them. It wasn't that the formula was stolen or burned. It was that the living, breathing computers who held the data simply powered down, and the operating system was lost forever. This phenomenon echoes throughout human history, a silent tragedy of lost arts. Consider the master builders of the Gothic cathedrals, who understood stresses and strains through rules of thumb and generational experience, leaving behind soaring stone skeletons whose construction secrets we still debate. Or the Polynesian navigators who could read ocean swells, star paths, and bird flights to traverse thousands of miles of open Pacific without a single written chart. These were technologies of the mind and body, as sophisticated as any engine, yet incredibly fragile because they existed only in the people who practiced them. Our modern world is built on the opposite principle, on codified, documented, reproducible science. We rely on manuals, specifications, and digital data that can survive independent of any single individual. This is a tremendous strength, ensuring continuity and allowing for rapid, cumulative progress. But it also creates a potential blind spot, a quiet assumption that all valuable knowledge gets written down. The story of Damascus steel is a stark reminder that some of humanity's most advanced crafts have been, and likely still are, forms of embodied intelligence. They are not just about what you know, but about how you see, feel, and respond in the moment. This leads us to a haunting reflection. What other pinnacles of human adaptation and artistry have slipped into the shadows simply because the chain of silent teaching was broken? Because no one was left who remembered the exact feel of the clay, the precise song of the wind in the rigging, or the perfect color of fire in the dark. The world of the forge was about to be drowned out by the roar of the factory. The final, irreversible blow to the ancient craft of Damascus steel came not from a conquering army, but from a revolution in productivity. In the smoky heartlands of 19th century England, a new alchemy was born, one that prized consistency over character. The Bessemer converter, a giant, pear-shaped vessel that could transform molten iron into steel in a matter of minutes by blasting air through it, changed everything. For the first time in human history, high-quality steel could be produced not in small, precious batches, but in rivers of molten metal, measured in tons per day. This new steel was a marvel of uniformity. Every bar was nearly identical to the next, its composition controlled and predictable. It was strong, it was reliable, and above all, it was cheap. The economic landscape that had supported the Damascus master for over a millennium collapsed overnight. Why would a general equip his army with blades that took a master smith months to create, each one a unique and costly artifact, when he could outfit every soldier with a serviceable, mass-produced sword at a tiny fraction of the price? The answer was a simple, brutal calculation of industrial logic. The new steel lacked the mesmerizing watery pattern and the nuanced performance of the old Wootz, but for the vast majority of applications, it was simply good enough. This was the final, quiet death of the tradition. It was not forgotten in a fire, but made obsolete on a balance sheet. The shift was profound, marking a fundamental change in human values. We moved from a world of craft to a world of industry, from unique objects born of individual genius to standardized products born of mechanical process. The story of the Damascus blade thus becomes a deeply poignant chapter in a much larger human narrative, the story of how industrialization reshaped, and sometimes completely erased, the intricate pre-modern worlds of handmade excellence. It asks us to consider what we gain in efficiency and accessibility, and what intangible qualities we might leave behind in the relentless pursuit of the new. Yet the anvil still sings. In workshops lit by the glow of modern forges, a new generation of artists has taken up the hammer, determined to channel the spirit of the ancient craft into forms the original masters could never have envisioned. This is not a quest to replicate the lost Wootz, but a vibrant artistic revival, a celebration of pattern and possibility. These contemporary smiths work with a palette of modern alloys, steels with names like 1084 and 15N20, chosen for their reliable behavior and dramatic contrast when etched. Through the disciplined art of pattern welding, they fold, twist, and manipulate these metals into breathtaking tapestries of steel. The goal is no longer to unlock a hidden nanostructure, but to deliberately paint with light and dark, creating blades that are canvases. The results can be astonishing, complex mosaics that depict landscapes, animals, or even tell entire stories through layered metal. Competitions and television shows have brought this art to a global audience, showcasing smiths who can engineer a flowing, watery pattern one day and a detailed portrait in steel the next. These new masters stand on the shoulders of the ancient ones, but they are looking toward a different horizon. They are proof that inspiration is immortal. The original technology may sleep in the earth and the history books, but the human desire to fuse beauty with strength, to find elegance in fire and force, burns as brightly as ever. This artistic lineage honors the past not through imitation, but through evolution, ensuring the legacy of Damascus is not a closed chapter, but an open invitation to create. A closed-loop system is a fragile and beautiful thing. The story of Damascus steel was not just about a sword. It was about a perfect, sustainable technology that thrived for over 1,000 years. Its existence required 3 interlocking parts, each as vital as the others. It needed the specific resource, the unique iron ore from India with its trace elements. It needed the specialized craft, the embodied knowledge of the Syrian master smiths who could unlock that ore's potential. And it needed the connective tissue, the stable, long-distance trade networks of the Silk Road that delivered the raw material to the waiting hands of the artisans. This was a self-reinforcing cycle, a technological ecosystem where each part supported the others. The demand for the blades justified the perilous mining and trade, which supplied the smiths, whose incredible products fueled the demand. For centuries, this loop spun, generating objects of legendary power. But an ecosystem is only as strong as its weakest link. When political shifts and conflict severed those trade routes, the loop was broken. The resource could no longer reach the craft. Without the raw material, the specialized knowledge, no matter how profound, had nothing to work upon. The artisans could not adapt because their entire art was built around a material that no longer arrived at their market stalls. The entire system, this magnificent closed loop, collapsed from a single point of failure. It teaches us that a technology is not just an invention, it is a living network of resource, knowledge, and access. This ancient story holds up a mirror to our own world, an era defined by hyper-specialized knowledge and impossibly complex global supply chains. We rely on rare earth minerals mined on one continent, processed in another, and assembled into devices by specialized robotics in a third. The knowledge to create and repair these devices is often locked away in corporate servers or held by a small group of experts. Our technological ecosystems are vast and powerful, but are they resilient? The lesson of the Damascus blade is not that we should abandon specialization or global trade. It is a caution to consider what happens when a link breaks. If a single source of a critical material is disrupted, if a vital piece of knowledge exists only in one place or in one format, we risk our own version of a lost art. We are creating wonders our ancestors could not dream of, but we must ask ourselves, are we also building systems that can remember how to rebuild themselves? Are we documenting not just the blueprints, but the intuition, the feel of the process? The silent forges of Damascus ask us to look at our own dazzling world and consider what we are doing to ensure its wonders are not just brilliant flashes, but sustainable fires that can be tended and passed on. The perfect blade is a dream shared by every civilization. Across the globe, from the misty islands of Britain to the mountainous shores of Japan, cultures have crafted legendary swords that serve as far more than weapons. They become avatars of national identity, divine right, and technological aspiration. Placing the Damascus sword alongside these other icons reveals a fascinating pattern, a shared human impulse to elevate a tool into a testament. The Japanese katana, for instance, shares a profound spiritual dimension with its Middle Eastern counterpart. Its creation was a sacred act, with the smith purifying himself through ritual, wearing ceremonial robes, and treating the forge as a temple. The folding process, while different in technique from the Wootz method, similarly aimed to purify and unify the steel, creating a blade believed to house a soul, a kami. Where the Damascus pattern emerged from the material's hidden nature, the katana's beauty was in its flawless, mirror-like finish and the ethereal hammer line, a visual record of the clay tempering process that gave the edge its hardness. Both traditions saw the smith not as a mere artisan, but as a medium through which a transcendent object entered the world. In the legends of Northern Europe, the sword often carries a moral or magical charge. King Arthur's Excalibur, drawn from the stone, is the ultimate symbol of legitimate sovereignty and divine favor. Its power is not in the quality of its steel, which is never described, but in its origin and who is worthy to wield it. Similarly, the Norse hero Sigurd's sword, Gram, was reforged from the shattered pieces of his father's blade, a weapon destined to slay a dragon. Here, the sword is an heirloom of fate, its power tied to lineage and prophecy. The Damascus sword, by contrast, derived its legend from a verifiable, observable superiority. Its authority came not from a stone or a prophecy, but from its undeniable performance on the battlefield. Yet, in all these stories, the common thread is the blade as a focal point for human ideals, whether those ideals are justice, destiny, or simply the relentless pursuit of perfection through craft. This comparative view illuminates why the loss of the Damascus technique resonates so deeply. The katana's tradition, though once secretive, survived through unbroken lineage and cultural veneration. The legends of Excalibur and Gram live on in endless retellings, but the Damascus sword represents a different kind of story, one where the physical truth behind the myth has vanished. We have the artifacts, we have the descriptions of their prowess, but the living chain of making was severed. This makes it the most tantalizing and tragic of all the legendary blades, a symbol where the symbolic power remains, but the tangible proof of how it was achieved has slipped into shadow. Our fascination, then, is not just with a sharp piece of metal, but with the ghost of a realized potential. It embodies a universal anxiety, the fear that a civilization's highest knowledge can be so fragile, so dependent on a specific alignment of resource, trade, and genius that it can simply evaporate from the world. The quest to recover its secret is in a way a quest to reassure ourselves that human achievement, once reached, can always be found again. The silent recipe of the Damascus blade may finally be whispering its secrets, not in a forge but inside a supercomputer. In the latest chapter of this centuries-long detective story, scientists are wielding a new kind of tool, digital reconstruction. They are building virtual worlds where the ancient process can be modeled, tested, and understood in ways no physical experiment could ever allow. This is not about recreating the blade, but recreating the conditions of its birth, atom by atom, degree by degree, inside a flawless digital universe. Using a technique called finite element analysis, researchers can create a precise simulation of that clay crucible buried in the Indian furnace. The program maps the geometry of the pot, the properties of the steel inside, and the heat of the surrounding coals. Then it calculates, it simulates the flow of thermal energy over hours and days, predicting exactly how the temperature will drop from the outside of the crucible inward, through the molten metal, at a rate of perhaps a few degrees per hour. This allows them to see, in a way no ancient eye ever could, the thermal gradients that guided the formation of those crucial carbide bands. They can ask questions that were once pure guesswork. What if the cooling took 4 days instead of 3? What if the crucible wall was slightly thicker on one side? The simulation provides an answer, showing how those changes would alter the steel's internal nano-landscape before the first hammer ever falls. But the modeling goes even deeper into the realm of molecular dynamics. Here, scientists don't just simulate heat, they simulate atoms. They create a virtual box representing a tiny fragment of the molten steel soup, populated with digital atoms of iron, carbon, vanadium, and other trace elements. They apply the laws of physics and set the simulation in motion. they can watch in accelerated time how these atoms jostle and bond as the virtual metal cools. Most importantly, they can observe the precise role of the trace elements. Do the vanadium atoms act as anchors, providing sites for the carbon atoms to gather and begin forming their nanowire structures? Do they slow down the movement of carbon atoms, giving them time to arrange into orderly bands rather than chaotic clumps? The molecular model lets them test these hypotheses by simply removing the digital vanadium and running the simulation again, comparing the two outcomes side by side. This digital forge offers an unprecedented advantage: the power of infinite experimentation. A researcher can run thousands of virtual trials in the time it takes to perform one physical crucible melt, which itself requires days of cooling. They can test extreme variables like impossibly pure ingredients or fantastically slow cooling rates, just to see the theoretical limits of the process. They can isolate single factors like the percentage of one trace element and observe its isolated effect on the final structure, something incredibly difficult to do in the messy reality of a physical workshop. This high-tech approach does not replace the smith or the historian, it collaborates with them. It provides a theoretical framework that guides physical experimentation, telling modern recreationists which chemical recipes and cooling protocols are most promising to try in the real world. It represents a beautiful fusion, the marriage of an ancient, silent mystery with the most cutting-edge computational power we possess. We are no longer just looking at the ghost in the steel. We are inviting it to live inside our machines, hoping that in the pristine, predictable world of ones and zeros, it will finally tell us the story it has kept for over 1,000 years. The concept of lost knowledge is itself a kind of mirror, reflecting our own assumptions about history. We often imagine a straight line where humanity steadily accumulates facts and skills, building an ever taller tower of understanding. A lost art like Damascus steel seems to be a stair that has crumbled away, a piece of the tower that fell. But this view may be too simple. Knowledge is not a static object that can be misplaced like a set of keys. It is a living conversation between a people, their environment, and the questions they are trying to answer. The conversation that produced those legendary blades was specific to its moment, a dialogue with a particular ore, a specific set of trade routes, and the urgent demands of the medieval battlefield. When those conditions changed, the conversation naturally shifted to new topics like mass production and ballistics. The old dialogue faded not because it was erased, but because the world started speaking a different language. So, was the knowledge truly lost? In one sense, absolutely. The precise, tactile, unspoken wisdom of the master smith, his ability to read the color of a 1200 degrees Celsius heat by firelight, that is gone. That specific human sensor is offline, yet in another, more profound sense, the core understanding achieved by those smiths never vanished. It simply transformed. The principles they mastered through intuition and generations of trial, the control of carbon, the manipulation of microstructure through heat and force, the quest for the perfect balance of hardness and flexibility, these are not secrets. They are the entire foundation of modern materials science. We express these principles differently, with electron microscopes and differential equations instead of hammer rhythms and the shade of cherry red, but the underlying truths about matter remain. The ghost of Damascus steel lives on in every high-performance alloy in a jet engine, in every carefully tempered tool, in every composite material designed at the nanoscale. We did not lose the discovery, we absorbed its lessons and built upon them with a new vocabulary. This reframes the entire quest. Perhaps the secret we have been chasing is not a list of instructions to be recovered, but a testament to be honored. It is proof of the breathtaking heights human ingenuity can reach when deeply engaged with the raw materials of the world. The Damascus smiths, working within the severe constraints of their time, without formal chemistry or precision instruments, achieved a mastery of material that still commands our awe. Their work stands as an eternal benchmark, a reminder that profound discovery is not the exclusive domain of the modern laboratory. It can emerge from the soot of a forge, the patience of a slow cool, and the attentive hands of a craftsman listening to the silent song of steel. Their legacy, then, is not a puzzle to be solved, but a standard to remember, a whisper from the past that asks us what magnificent conversations we are having with our world today, and what timeless truths our own hands might yet reveal. That rippling pattern on a blade is more than a memory, it is a question. Our journey through the legend of Damascus steel has taken us across continents and centuries, from the heat of Indian crucibles to the intuition of Syrian forges, and finally into the quiet light of modern laboratories. We have seen that its story is not a single thread, but a tapestry woven from geology, trade, war, art, and an almost forgotten science. The exact living touch of the master smith may be lost to time, a whisper that faded when the world stopped listening. Yet, in striving to hear that whisper again, we have uncovered a narrative far richer than any single sword. We have witnessed the fragility of a closed technological loop, where the severing of a trade route could silence a 1,000-year-old conversation between human hands and a specific piece of the earth. We have seen how the highest forms of knowledge often lie not in books, but in the senses, in the color of fire and the ring of a hammer, making them heartbreakingly vulnerable to the passage of a single generation. And we have marveled at how a quest for a perfect weapon became, over time, a mirror for our own values, reflecting our shift from unique craft to mass production, from embodied skill to codified data. The true legacy of these swords, then, lies not in their unmatched sharpness, which time has softened, but in the enduring sharpness of the questions they leave with us. They ask what priceless understanding we are losing in our own age of rapid, disposable innovation. They challenge us to consider what makes a technology truly resilient, and what we must do to ensure the wonders we create today do not become the silent mysteries of tomorrow. The ghost in the steel, it turns out, was never just a formula for metal. It was a reflection of ourselves, our ingenuity, our fragility, and our endless desire to transform the raw materials of the world into something that approaches the sublime. If this exploration into the heart of a forgotten craft resonated with you, we would love to hear your reflections in the comments below. Consider subscribing to join us as we continue to uncover the hidden histories and quiet revolutions that have shaped and continue to shape the world around us.